Welcome to Duncan Thorin Shields YouTube channel. I managed to con Duncan into convincing his friend to pay me thousands and thousands of dollars as a professional Counter-Strike player, so maybe he can convince you that some of his analysis is correct.
Enjoying TwistZz this weekend? Yeah, he's tearing it up for FaZe, but I was talking about the plot twist of being able to get 14% off instead of the usual 10% with my code Thorin at gamersubs.gg. Don't you love savings? Now, TwistZz has left Team Liquid and joined FaZe Clan. In fact, at the time I'm making this video, because I was a bit late getting it out there, I've basically already missed him actually just joining the team. He's already been in the team. He's actually tearing up at the moment. So I'm not going to do this one actually like my usual trade/signing videos, not least because Carrigan hasn't joined the team yet. So it's kind of one where it doesn't make that much sense to just look at the team in isolation. I don't think this lineup will exist for that much longer. In fact, it won't. So I'm not going to make this about should Team Liquid have removed him, was he the right player, was fit, like my usual approach. I'm just going to skip straight to all the stuff about TwistZz and let's look at his career. This is just a video about TwistZz because he is no ordinary player. Even if you've only watched CS for the last year and a half, you think, yeah, he's a decent player. You know, he has good games, but you know, what's the big deal about him, right? This is a very significant player in the history of North American Counter-Strike, particularly CSGO. Like, he has the potential to be the best ever from North America. And quite frankly, I know this will sound like blasphemy because we live in a world where Simple and Zero are doing absolutely unbelievable things. And even in the past, players like Device, Olaf Meister, Get Right had such complete games and ways to control a match that they seemed untouchable. For someone like TwistZz, who maybe hasn't quite gotten to that level, even if he's had brief periods of form that look comparable. But I think he has the potential to be the best player ever out of anyone to ever play CSGO. Any nationality, any region. That's the level of talent that we're talking about right now. So, the problem is, if I'm talking even just best from NA and CSGO, his former teammate ErikHillestad has that status right now. So, the problem in my opinion, this is the reason I made this video, is if he doesn't build on what he did in late 2017, 2018, first sort of half of 2/3 of 2019, then I actually have my concerns because if he just stays the kind of player he was in Team Liquid for the last year and a half, he will go down as one of the great what-if players. And quite frankly, when you look at his age and how much experience he has and the level of talent he's had in Team Liquid, in both all those variations, and now in FaZe Clan, he should be in his prime right now. There's no waiting around. This is when he should be at his absolute best, and he should be in the mix with Ziwu, Simple, ErikHillestad, all those guys, Device, everyone you can think to name right now who's a monster. So you look at his career, people forget how experienced this guy is because of how young he is. Like, way back in 2016, he was a rookie with potential, but he was way too young, he was way too experienced, but you had the flashes at least in NA. 2017, he starts to show strong play. It's basically him and ErikHillestad at that point in time. There was obviously no NAF yet. Sure, it's questionable in terms of, like, obviously they had Stanislaw and that it somewhat failed, and then later they made Nitro the IGL. 2018, he was a monster late in the year, particularly always springs to mind ESL 1 New York 2018. His performance in that final was comparable to some of the shit Simple and Zebo have done in finals they've lost. Like, one of the best performances ever in a final, and the guy lost the best of 5. 2019, for the first half to 2/3, he was very strong. I actually think in the summer he was very, very, very good. It's just his problem was, even though he was unplayable, especially on T side, the problem is the polish around ErikHillestad's game and the way it felt like he controlled games meant ErikHillestad stole his MVPs in the same ways, if you go back far enough, Forrest and Get Right have stolen each other's MVPs, and people in Astralis have stolen each other's MVPs. The problem is, after that player break in 2019, the team dropped off at the major, but then still were an elite team that didn't win championships. Him individually, I think he was the player who dropped off the most and never properly recovered. In my opinion, he had brief flashes afterwards, or he would play good or above average for his position, for his status, for the team he was on, but he was never the best player in Team Liquid again, or even close to my money, and he wasn't as good as he was previously, and that has been a big concern for me, because I think 2020 was a complete waste of his career, and now 2021, it's all about this repivot with FaZe, and that's potentially what's going to turn it all around. So let's talk about all the different aspects. Like, let's just start with talent, right? If you make bold statements like you're the best, you know, one of the best ever from NA, and, you know, he could be the best to ever play from any region. Well, we better have a lot of fucking talent then, right? So this guy has it. Like, I know people like to think that NA players, like, maybe because they don't have the same stylistic approach to the game or the same experience, they don't have the same teammates, the same, like, system to come up in. They always try to make it sound like if NA sucks, it's in talent as well. It's like, no. NA and CIS will always have incredible raw talents, mechanics, aimers, all that stuff, AWPers, pistol gods, everything. Their problem is everything else in the game, and Counter-Strike isn't just about just having raw aim, right? If I set my shot up to be very easy, something I think Nico does, I dominate the whole game if I have Nico's skills. If I make my shot very hard and I'm Nico with the same skills, now I'm not going to get the same impact on the game. So it wasn't about my mechanics. The other things attenuated what my mechanics could do. They amplified it or limited it, depending on who I am. Now, good news if you're a fan of good aimers. TwistZz is one of the best to ever play CSGO from any region in that sense. Like, his first bullet aim is fucking bonkers. Hence why, if you've ever seen, like, a classic example would be, if he's at, like, long A on Dust 2, or the opposite, he's at the top of the bomb site of long A on Dust 2, so either in the pit or at the top. This guy, it looks like he's in the AIM fucking server, AIM map or something, because all he'll do, CSDM rather, he'll just one-tap everyone in the head, and all the bullets are crisp and right on the head, and his aim is perfectly on. It's unreal. Same reason he's a pistol god, in my opinion. I think he's the best aimer to ever come from NA in CSGO, and quite frankly, I saw him all in CS 1.6. I'll give him it for 1.6. So I think he's just the best NA player to ever aim in Counter-Strike. That's how good this guy is. I think, quite frankly, let's expand it again like I did with talent. He's one of the best aimers ever in CSGO, period. He might not have the years some of the others do, but in his peak, for those year, 6 months, 3 months, depending on what period of time in his career we're talking about, he's been unbelievable how skilled he is. I mean, I think players like Device don't have his aim on the level of TwistZz. They're just better players overall. Like, in that sense, when I think of his aim and his mechanics, and when he's at his peak, how consistent it can be, I think he's the NA Nico. I actually think that's the contrast that a lot of people haven't made. That's a pretty good one. So to me, it's not really a surprise that he comes to FaZe. They give him all Nico spots and he's banging out of control again. Because I see him as a guy with a very high mechanical level. People often talk about Nico's aim because it is fucking bonkers. But he pairs it with the great game sense, the style, the pace that he moves at. I think TwistZz has a lot of that. If he's in the roles he wants to do, if the IGL uses him well, and obviously he doesn't have the same level of experience at the top level necessarily that Nico does. They had similar kinds of careers, but I think Nico had some better teammates at certain points in his time, even though actually, if you look at the last 3 or 4 years, it's probably a push in terms of overall talent between Team Liquid and FaZe, right? So the interesting thing also about his mechanics is, in my opinion, the most overrated mechanics, the fool's gold of aiming, is people who only hit the crazy flick shots. That isn't even TwistZz game. In fact, he sets the shots up well. He's very, very smooth and precise. There's not a lot of crazy, flashy aiming all over the place. But the shots are incredibly flashy because of how good the aim is, how consistent the aim can be, and the fact that when he's at his peak, he can take over the game, in theory, against everyone. Just remember that Dust 2 he had, and I think it was ESL New York in the semi-final, right? Against... Or was that? That actually might have been the... No, I think it was a semi, right? Because, yes, obviously they lost to Evil Geniuses. I was thinking of ECS where they're in the final. That game he had... Am I mixing it up now? Am I thinking of ECS now? Maybe I'm thinking of ECS. Whichever one they played Dust 2, and he just went absolutely fucking bonkers. I think it could have been ECS, actually. That type of a TwistZz, that's the one everyone should fear to play. That's the guy that'll fuck your whole world up. So I don't think you can actually put his mechanics... You can't overestimate his mechanics. Let's put it that way. And crucially, as I've been alluding to, much like Nico, within the context of if he's in his role and the rest of it, that's one thing I actually respect about Nico. At least he takes his no matter what. He understands his aim. You can see by how he plays. Like, he doesn't play too aggressively. Even if he's an entry, he'll take some space, then hold it for key angles, much like Nico would actually, and then take the favourable angles, thereby increasing the chance that if you take that duel, you're going to win it anyway with your mechanics. You just definitely win it if you have the skills and the game sense these guys do. My issue is, unlike a lot of the great players I've mentioned, is what happens when we go into mentality. Because one thing that's very interesting is, back when Elige was in his choking period, similar to Devices, just a year or two afterwards, I used to look at TwistZz when he came up in 2017 Team Liquid and be like, this could be the secret. Elige can get his shit together himself, but if this guy doesn't have issues with that same mentality aspect, remember, he wasn't in some of the teams that Team Elige was in, no problem, right? That's one of the things that can right the ship, as it were. And you can look at him and go, right, well, he's on board, I'm on board. Early on, he was doing that. I've had conversations with him. He had a strong mentality early on, especially in terms of battling against the best teams with people more experienced than you, improving as a player, knowing that you aren't ready just yet, claiming your space in a team that you're supposed to be a star. I mean, I actually had a very interesting discussion with him in 2017 where I basically told him, like, look, you're popping off right now. Now is your time, and everyone's going to come to you and they're going to tell you, you're the best NA player, like, this is your team, take over this team. And this is at a time when NAF had joined earlier that year. Let me think. Actually, was that? No, NAF actually joined the next year. That was the time when they had Elige still. And so, obviously, traditionally, I think Elige was the better player then. But later, they would even get NAF as well. I basically told him, you are literally, as you develop your game, which you're doing now, you have to never encroach on Elige's game because he is that close to already being it in terms of like a superstar player. So what you have to do is allow him his space to develop. You'll keep developing. And if you can develop so you coexist and you can be a duo going on, I told him, mate, you can play 5 years together. You can win championships. You can win majors. The two of you can do anything as long as you manage your relationship with each other. Make sure there's space to both play in the same game without massive role overlap. And then you just work with your teammates and get the right teammates in. So I'll just say, by the way, wasn't wrong, was I? Now, I will say, I get the feeling from that player break onwards, he does seem to have become a bit more emo in terms of his personality. Even if you look at his interviews, it's about, like him wanting something, but his team won't give him it, or maybe he thought something, but they didn't say something, or expect someone to just notice that he's not in the right position. Like, I had some issues there. It felt like he had communication issues with his team in terms of how he feels, but more importantly, convincing them to get on board with you. One thing I always say about IGLs is, one thing I will put as a knock against Carrigan, is if he couldn't convince his players and some of his teams to do what he wanted, then that is a problem, because that is part of being a truly great in-game leader, which he is, but that's just one of his few weaknesses. Same for Elige. You know what? TwistZz rather. I can say whatever I like about Nico's attitude and his ego. Tell you what, he has no problem convincing everyone in his teams he should get his spots and play the way he plays. He'll even make people who don't really agree sort of think they have to agree. I wish I saw some more of that from TwistZz. Like, I get the sense I did in a way by the way he was actually willing to be public about it, and now he comes to FaZe. I think he understands this is like put up or shut up town. Like, you can't just be average or above average in this team, or we're just going to call you an above average player, not a great player. So I think, quite frankly, it's a bit telling for me in terms of mentality that his own Team Liquid teammates didn't seem to view him as the main star. Because remember, he doesn't really have role overlap with Elige. So to me, the idea that they were like NAF or Grim or someone like push him out of his positions and take his space, that tells me like you're having issues convincing your own teammates, mate. Like, why aren't they on board? Why don't they see what I see and know that you would be the person they need to ride to the championship? Then you look at his role, which obviously ties directly into this and has been the main point of contention. Because if you know his early career, when he was in TSM and going into the Misfits period, that was when a lot of people said he was too much of a beta and tried to lurk all the time, which is interesting if you see his game later, because he's just a monster entry player if he wants to be. Then when he was under Stanislaw and going into the early Nitro period, he's got, and quite frankly all the time with Nitro, he was kind of like a semi-lurk. Like certain maps, he holds a lurk position on the other side of the map, or he holds it for like 30% of the map. The rest of the map, he usually goes with the entry pack. He can be the first in, usually if it's like Catwalk does too. Otherwise, he's probably like second or third in. And then sometimes when they take the site, he's the guy who comes and covers the flank, maybe because he's played lurk positions in his career before. So I thought, quite frankly, maybe a little bit too much lurking post-player break 2019. I could see that. Like, I didn't really like the way on Inferno or T-side, they just put him at the boiler all the time watching that, or boiler, or just go with the mid-pack. Like, I thought he should have been more instrumental on how they attacked the banana, personally. I'm not sure whose role he should have taken there. Maybe Stewie should have taken the boiler position in that sense. Don't know. And I think it's very telling that coldzera in his interview said about TwistZz joining, literally, this is a quote, he will take the main positions on the map, which used to be Nico's positions. And what do you know? TwistZz was very good initially. Quite frankly, now looks unplayable at the moment as of the time I'm recording this video on a Sunday. Then you look at the context of his teammates over the years. This is another issue I have. He's had some very good teammates. His issue, if anything, has been getting on the same page as some of them. Because 2016, yeah, he was playing with nobodies. 2017, he gets a good lineup. 2018 is a very good lineup already. Pretty complete, generally. Maybe doesn't have a truly great IGL, but whatever. 2019 and 2020, he has lots of help, lots of talent. One of the most stacked, like I personally said it at the time, I believe it. It's the most skilled lineup, man for man and collectively, to ever play CSGO. And I think that holds to this day. I will say he's never played under a truly great in-game leader, which is why I'm very excited about this Carrigan experiment. I know people are going to go, what about Sean Gairs? I think Sean Gairs was debatable whether he was truly great. I think he was a very good and maybe at times great IGL. Like for me, Sean Gairs is kind of like the NA MSL. That's why you can see the difference in how people react to their charisma and personality, that people are fine with Sean Gairs doing fuck all a bunch of tournaments with the kind of talent that MSL has. But if MSL wins those tournaments, like somehow he's not good enough. Like, I've never really gotten that. I know it's because MSL's a bit of a whiner, right? Everyone loves short big airs, right? That fucking smile. I think in terms of potential, and this is the key central point of this video, crap. Like we're talking about one of the most crazy potential players of all time. The issue is this. It's not that he sucks. I don't think he ever actually sucked in Team Liquid. I think even after the player break, he had a tournament or two, like the Blast Global Finals where he sucked. Aside from that, he would still have tournaments where he was good, above average. It's not even like he's ever been unable to frag. The issue is he should never be an average or just good player. He should be like a leash, always a top 10 player, always consistent. When you're at your peak, you dominate, you win the match. When you're not, you still do decently. A bad game for you is an average to decent game for other players. That's what he has the capability to be, and I'm not sure that's really what he's been, quite frankly, especially very rarely hitting that top end as much as a real star player do. But you know what? I've said it on Twitter, I've said it on By the Numbers. I think he's going to do it now. Now, anyone who now's just seen the Blast is going to go, well, everyone could say that because that. You can go back and check these things, boys. You can go watch the episodes where I say this. I even said months before it was actually known he would go to FaZe Clan that I hope that they give Carrigan twists in FaZe Clan. I think that's the solution to make both of them the best at their roles, potentially. So in my opinion, both in FaZe, and more specifically because he's getting Carrigan, who, by the way, I think is the best in-game leader ever at utilising his star players, making them feel comfortable, and comfortable in the context of a working team, not just catering to someone's ego. So I think him and ColdZz have the potential to be very, very good. I think actually, I mean, I've said this in the past when I was talking about Elige. I think ColdZz is just Elige with worse aim and more confidence. Like, they have quite similar games in some respects, not in terms of like how much of the entry they play, but like you look at like the skill set, like when they're strongest, what type of a game, their consistent factor, etc. So I actually think the pairing, there shouldn't be any role overlap, in my opinion, between those two players. So one of the reasons I always said, I agree, it doesn't necessarily make sense anymore. If you're Team Liquid, I think you should have structured your team always so that there was never a world where TwistZz and Elige aren't the stars. And you hold on to those guys for half a decade if you can, because you're going to regret letting a player like that go, I guarantee. In my opinion, what's so cool is, if people know at the end of 2018, when it was known Carrigan's going to leave FaZe and Team Liquid potentially might want to change a player, some people thought at the time kick Nitro and get different IGL. I personally wanted Carrigan to go to Team Liquid and just have that squad. Now, this is before they had Stewie, obviously. I think that squad alone, Carrigan could do fucking monster work with that team. So I'm in a way getting like kind of a rework of that, right? Because I've got TwistZz and kind of an Elige type factor here. So I think this is very, very exciting. I think he's going to get his shit together this year. I think Carrigan's going to help them be a top team. And now we'll get to see some of this potential that if someone didn't watch CS except in the last year and a half, you haven't really seen who TwistZz is and who he should be. Because at the end of his career, if he isn't thought of as a top 10 CSGO player from any region to ever play, something went wrong in terms of his mentality, how he worked with his teams, or how his teams used him. That's the level of skill we're talking about at this point in time. This video was kindly supported by Lagger15, Pronogo, Andrew, Animosity, ErikHillestad, Andreas Kroknes, Jensen Goh, Hades, Zoomba, Zyrathenia, Dean Tanglis, Tobias Bernasconi, Alexander Rao, and as always, a special thanks goes out to my boy Jerky's Minion. Do you want to ask some sort of a topic or suggest the guest for some upcoming content I have? Do you want to know something in my monthly video AMA? Do you want teasers, see who the next guests are for my content? Or maybe you want to take part in one of those lengthy audio discussions with me? Well, if so, put your money where your mouth is and join the Skilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description box below.